UFC 314. Let's get started. We have a co-main event here. The title fight is still being developed, but in the co-main, we'll see Alexandar Pantoja, who currently has 7 consecutive wins. He's on a perfect streak. He'll be facing Kai Kara-France, ranked number 4 in the division. He too is coming off a fresh victory. This fight will likely take place in Miami on April 13th. Just to remind you, UFC 314's co-main event. The main event, as expected, will be another title fight. Everyone is eagerly anticipating a potential rematch between Topuria and Volkanovski. Tepuria promised this fight to Volkanovski, despite all the talk about moving divisions. And it seems the UFC has indicated they're not keen on Topuria switching weight classes at this time. As for Volkanovski, he's been waiting. He's mentioned many times that he's been promised this fight. However, Volkanovski's coach recently gave a fresh interview, stating that there's still no concrete information, no confirmations. They're ready to fight Tepuria in April, but the question now is whether Tepuria will be ready. Will he be prepared for this date? Does he like the fight and everything else? We're awaiting an answer from Ilya's team. Meanwhile, everyone's talking about the inevitable matchup between Topuria and Volkanovski. It's coming soon, friends, just a week away. But no, they won't be fighting just yet, and I'm not sure if they'll even face off. They will meet in the cage, I'd say, but as corners, because Volkanovski's teammate, Colby Thicknesse, has now been given the chance to debut in the UFC. He's fighting another debutant, Alexandar Topuria, whose opponent was changed at the last minute. Alexandar Topuria is the younger brother of Ilya Topuria, so Ilya will clearly be in his corner, and Volkanovski will be with Thicknesse. They'll meet next week at UFC 312 in Australia, an interesting crossover. Now, let's move on to Dana White. Yesterday there was a press conference where he said a lot of things, including about the promotion, such as GFL, the one that's now gathering all the retired fighters, everyone who was released from the UFC years ago, all the veterans, and bringing them in. It's like they're pretending they're ready to pay them crazy salaries. And everyone is wondering whether they'll even hold a single event, or if they're just bluffing. Surprisingly, Dana White, who usually takes shots at other promotions, competitors, and mocks them, didn't make fun of GFL. He believes it's not a bubble, not a scam, and that they actually seem to have money. He thinks they must have found a lot of cash somewhere and are ready to pay up. But Danny, in his usual way, doesn't see them as competitors. He says there's no promotion in the world that he considers a competitor to the UFC. Instead, he's more focused on competitors like American football, European football, and the movie industry. Those are what he sees as real competition, not GFL, since the Global Fight League hasn't even held a single event yet. By the way, they've already had their draft and selection process. It looks like the next stage will start in April, with real fights, so we're expecting some matchmaking decisions in the next month. We'll find out who will be fighting whom. But, as the creator of Global Fight League says, their unique feature is that any fighter on their roster can fight any other fighter, but of course, within the same weight class. That's enough about that. White also mentioned that he can't imagine Islam Makhachev moving up to middleweight. He's willing to consider Makhachev moving up one weight class. And they're talking about real fights for Makhachev for the 77-kilogram title, but he can't picture Makhachev jumping up 2 weight classes. Middleweight is an entirely different level, so White seemed a bit confused and didn't really know what to say about it, because they've never even considered it. And by the way, in the context of Makhachev possibly fighting for the middleweight title, White is confident in his abilities, and if given the opportunities and time, he'd definitely try it, even at 84 kilograms. The current contender for the middleweight title, Strickland, had some pretty harsh words for Makhachev, telling him, "You're too small, you can't beat me, so go back to your damn Dagestan, bro, and calm down." That wasn't all Strickland said. He also took shots at Khamzat Chimaev, calling him a Chechen sellout, and there was a lot of trash talk. He practically cursed at him, saying Chimaev wasn't a man. But if anything, he'd be up for a fight because anyone who fights Chimaev makes a lot of money. Strickland wasn't holding back on the trash talk, and it's actually interesting to see what will happen when they meet, because he said things that Khamzat is likely to take very personally. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So, if Strickland beats Duplessis, we're probably going to see Strickland versus Chimaev. The build-up will likely be huge. White also spoke about the guys currently outside the UFC. For example, there's Vadim Nemkov, but White said they haven't discussed this with anyone and haven't even thought about signing Vadim. Moreover, as it turned out, as said by the vice president of PFL, Vadim didn't have his last fight under contract. He still has almost a couple of fights left, and his contract might even be valid until the end of 2025. And from what I understand, Nemkov didn't even know about this. White also discussed Chimaev. Chimaev seems to be preparing to return to the UFC. He wants to do it. The matchmakers told him, as he himself mentioned, that a couple of fights, and they might try to bring him back. White himself said, Chimaev could be a champion anywhere, in any other league, but not with us. We're not interested in him. The matchmakers don't want to work with this guy. Later, Chimaev also commented on Dana's recent statement, giving his comments to journalists, saying that he had a call with Hunter Campbell. Campbell congratulated him on his win in Brave, that there were no problems, everything is understood. He's ready to come back and wants the opportunity, if he's given the chance. But, as Chimaev assures, everything is fine with Campbell and with Maynard. Maybe Sean Shelby turned against him? But we don't know. And we can't ignore the fact that White harshly responded to Bryce Mitchell, who released his podcast this week, where he decided to philosophize about how Hitler was actually a good guy. I'd go fishing with him. After all, he fought for his nation, for his people. The Holocaust is all nonsense. It was invented. It's propaganda. They're pushing it on us. There was no Holocaust. It's impossible to burn so many people. There was no genocide. It's all fiction. They're trying to slander poor Hitler. It's as if he's not defending him. But by saying this, he almost defends him, considering him a cool guy with whom it would be nice to chat. And according to Bryce Mitchell, he killed Jews because they were turning German kids into gays. Anyway, there's no point in commenting on this. Bryce Mitchell is absolutely insane. And Dana says that there is no dumber person in the world. He's the dumbest person on the planet, and he can't be fixed. Because if you're talking to a dumb person, he'll always be dumb. They called him, told him everything, and Dana made it clear that now we can only eagerly wait for someone to bury Bryce Mitchell in the cage. This is the kind of fun the UFC has, and I think many will indeed be looking forward to that, since Bryce Mitchell is already famous for many strange things. He believes that seatbelts in cars are dangerous for health. He believes that schools should never be attended. He thinks McDonald's burgers contain human meat. He once drilled his own balls with a drill. He believes the earth is flat. I don't need to continue. White is right. We're just living in an era where all the dumb people have been given the chance to speak through social media. So we're forced to reap the consequences. Because idiots don't stay quiet. Honestly, today feels a bit strange. As the girls say, retrograde Mercury, or something else. I don't know, but let's switch to something else and talk about a few more crazies. They'll be here too. Right now, we have the UFC tournament in Saudi Arabia. The weigh-ins were today. Only one fighter on the card failed to make weight. Lucas Alexander couldn't make the featherweight limit. Everyone else is good to go. Guys, I am honestly shocked by Nassourdine Imavov's shape. He looks amazing. He seems charged up and powerful. I don't think he's ever looked like this before. So, respect. Imavov has clearly taken his fight with Israel very seriously. And Adesanya, to be honest, looks really relaxed. Before his fight with Dricus, he was tense. Something was clearly bothering him. Now, he seems like he's really enjoying the process. And maybe that's why he says nothing is pressuring him. Finally, there's no belt on the line, and it's just a bit easier to fight. He genuinely looks like Adesanya has come to enjoy the fight. Pavlovich surprisingly weighed in, and doesn't seem that heavy. He came in around 113 kilograms. We're waiting for Shara Bullet, who's really loved and always gets a great reception. The fight with Michael Venom Page is happening, and the two main anime fans are facing off against each other. I'm of course talking about Page and Adesanya, and Shara Bullet had a nice chat with his fellow unfortunate brother, Michael Bisping. During their conversation, it became pretty clear that Shara can't see anything with one eye and probably says he can see a little bit, just to avoid any issues with commissions. Let's keep going with the news. Who have we not discussed yet? Well, we haven't talked about Conor McGregor. Conor had a pretty intense situation this week with Paul Hughes. Yes, those words when he yelled that Hughes isn't Irish, that he's a traitor, that he's a jerk, and all the other things. Sorry for the vulgarities, but those were Conor McGregor's words. I'm even trying to soften them a bit. All this happened against the backdrop of Hughes showing respect for Khabib, as you've heard. And that sent Conor into a rage. Yesterday, he posted a video with very questionable quality, where he talked about Paul Hughes, calling him a bootlicker, a traitor to the nation, a boot polisher, and so on. But that wasn't the end of it, folks. Conor spent the entire week going after Hughes, trashing him, and then on Friday, he just went off the rails. MMA Junkie called it a crazy racist rant directed at Khabib, and indeed, suddenly, Conor switched back to Khabib, as if 7 years, or however long it's been, hadn't passed, as if it was a fresh scandal. Everything was mixed up, really. The text sounded like it was written by some cheap free AI. It was confusing and weird. I would say it was written in the style of Tony Ferguson, only without the emojis. He called Khabib fat, lazy, and scared. He repeated the same thing several times. He brought up Khabib's father, talked about Khabib's kids, and demanded that he show them. Just a whole lot of filth. Of course, the post was deleted pretty quickly. I don't know if he sobered up or calmed down or if his buzz wore off. I don't understand what's going on, but it's really dirty and disgusting. And even Conor's followers in the comments were saying that the guy has kind of lost it. Francis Ngannou is currently living in Saudi Arabia, so of course, he stopped by to support his bro Israel. He believes in him. Jiri Prochaska is taking a break in Hawaii, joking about meeting Pereira, but overall, he's got this whole vibe going on. Haka folks. Michael Chandler said he's ready to fight Arman Tsarukyan, since apparently, Arman was told he needs to fight someone else before going for a title shot, so Chandler's ready to be his opponent. But if that doesn't work out, there's always the option of fighting Pimblett, and Chandler's down for that too. Alex Pereira, in his big interview this week, mentioned that he's also interested in boxing. He's already had a few boxing matches and would like to have more, especially if it's something truly significant, like a fight with Alexandar Usyk. He's really into that idea. Pavlovich made it clear that he understands that after what happened last summer, there's a part of the audience that turned away from him. He felt it, but says it doesn't affect him. He's happy there are still people supporting him. Dricus du Plessis commented on the fact that Pereira will be in Sean Strickland's corner. And of course, du Plessis found it funny because Pereira doesn't speak English, and Strickland only speaks English, so he doesn't understand how they'll connect. Du Plessis jokes that, honestly, Sean probably doesn't even understand what his regular coach says to him in English. So what's Pereira really going to be able to advise him on? And du Plessis thinks it won't help him much. By the way, Khamzat Chimaev announced on his social media that he's now a citizen of the United Arab Emirates and has received a passport. From what I understand, until recently, Khamzat didn't have any citizenship other than Russian. He wasn't a citizen of Sweden, but now he's got UAE citizenship.